This video describes the crimes against humanity that Germany and China have committed and will be required to pay in the same coin. Hello friends, this is Unmasked Truth with Harmanjeet Saini, where I provide unique analysis of world events based on the unmasked truth that after surrender, Germany continued World War II clandestinely and became a killing machine. I also provide true news that you will find nowhere else. I have been motivated to deliver this message because of attempts by German masqueraders to preach to me continually for the past 15 or 16 years about forgiveness through messages every 2 to 3 months in my church and other places through preachers or others who are German masqueraders. There is a time for forgiveness and a time for judgment. Germans were forgiven at the end of World War II after their unconditional surrender. Because of the worldwide atrocities they have committed since, now it is time for judgment on them. Here is an example from the Bible that makes this crystal clear. 1 Kings 20 tells the story of Ahab, king of Israel, when Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, attacked him. God delivered Israel from his hands. Next year, Ben-Hadad returned and attacked again. God again helped Israel defeat Ben-Hadad and the Syrians. Then the Bible records what happened next in verses 31 to 34. And Ben-Hadad's servants said to him, Behold now, we have heard that the kings of the house of Israel are merciful kings. Let us, I pray you, put sackcloth on our loins and ropes upon our heads, and go out to the king of Israel. Peradventure he will save your life. So they girded sackcloth on their loins and put ropes on their heads, and came to the king of Israel and said, Your servant Ben-Hadad says, I pray you, let me live. And King Ahab of Israel said, Is he yet alive? He is my brother. Now the men did diligently observe whether anything would come from him, and did hastily catch it, and they said, Your brother Ben-Hadad. Then he said, Go bring him. Then Ben-Hadad came forth to Ahab, and he caused him to come up into the chariot. And Ben-Hadad said unto him, The cities which my father took from your father I will restore, and he shall make streets for you in Damascus, as my father made in Samaria. Then said Ahab, I will send you away with this covenant. So Ahab made a covenant with Ben-Hadad and sent him away. But then God sent a prophet to give Ahab, king of Israel, a message, recorded in verse 42. Thus says the Lord, because you have let go out of your hand a man whom I appointed to utter destruction, therefore your life shall go for his life, and your people for his people. Frank-Walter Steinmeier, President of Germany, Angela Merkel, Ursula von der Leyen, Eberhard Zorn, and the other military generals of Germany, Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett, and other German masquerader leadership in the United States. You take me for a numbskull in thinking that sending preachers every 2 months to preach forgiveness to me, you would persuade me to forgive your atrocities. Steinmeier and Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett have put a perhaps more than $1 billion bounty on my head. I am delivering this message to you. Now it is time for judgment in you, not the time for forgiveness of your atrocities. So let me get on with the message. Germany surrendered to the Allies unconditionally on May 7, 1945, but continued the war clandestinely after a lull of only 2 years. The First World War was orchestrated by Germany, which resulted in about 16 to 20 million military and civilian dead. Germany started World War II, which resulted in 50 to 55 million dead directly related to the war, and an additional 20 to 28 million dead due to war-related diseases and famine. During the Second World War, 6 million Jews were killed in concentration camps by shootings, starvation, in gas chambers and gas wagons, and by other means. The dead also, in addition to the 6 million Jews, included 5.7 million Russian civilians and 3 million Russian soldiers prisoners of war, 1.8 million Poles, around 312,000 Serb civilians, and 250,000 to 500,000 Roma or Gypsies. Germany has not been brought to justice for these crimes against humanity. The Allies forgave the Germans for these atrocities because they felt that the terms of the Versailles Treaty after the First World War had been somewhat harsh on Germany, even though they started both wars. The Americans even went out of their way to help Germany's economic recovery after the war with aid in the Marshall Plan. The Americans and the British wanted to show that they are a magnanimous and merciful people and who have no enmity against the German people. They felt that in contrast to the harsh terms of the Versailles Treaty, if they demonstrated forgiveness and showed kindness in the face of utter and devastating defeat, that would endear them to the German people. Oh, how wrong they were. They simply had not understood the German character. It became evident only when it was discovered around 1998 to 2000 that they were actual literal devil worshippers and that Satan the devil was literally their God. The Bible has provided us enough clues about the implacable character of Satan the devil and hence the Germans. It has been stated that World War II has been the deadliest military conflict in history. That assessment too has been wrong. The deadliest conflict in human history has been the clandestine war after surrender in World War II that Germany has waged with all its enemies any time in its history, but mainly those during the two world wars. In an earlier video of November 15, 2020, I had estimated the number of dead in America, Britain, France, Russia, and among the rest of Germany's enemies in the clandestine war at 120 to 150 million, with zero casualties for Germany. To understand the huge number of deaths and murders committed by the Germans and German masqueraders, we must understand who Germany considered its World War II enemies to be. The Allies, of course, are number one. That includes America, British Commonwealth nations of Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the whites of South Africa, and then France and Russia. Then Punjabis in India, who live in India and Pakistan, of whom Sikhs are a part, because they were represented in the British Indian Army in large numbers, and then Africans who were part of the British African Army. The Jews were specially targeted because they hunted and prosecuted Nazis after the war. Then nations such as Greece, Norway, and Muslim North African nations were targeted because they resisted the Germans or leaned towards the British side. Iraq was targeted because Iraqis occupy ancient German territory when they were known as Assyrians. Germany has had a large hand in wars in Africa and Latin America in attempts to gain access to their natural resources. It has supported radical Islamic movements to commit acts of terrorism against American, British, Russian, French, and Israeli interests globally. Here is how I arrived at a rough estimate of the number of dead at 120 to 150 million. Military and civilian deaths in all the military and civil wars since World War II, in which Germany had an indirect hand, have been estimated at between 20 to 30 million. These major wars include the conflicts between India and Pakistan, the Mau Mau rebellion in Kenya, Ugandan killings under Idi Amin, Greek Civil War, Arab-Israeli conflicts, Korean War, Algerian War, Vietnam War, many Sudanese civil wars, Nigerian Civil War, Angolan Civil War, Bangladesh Civil War, Lebanese Civil Wars, Afghanistan Wars, Iran-Iraq War, Sri Lankan Civil War, Ethiopian Civil War, Somali Civil War, Central African Wars, Bosnian War, Iraqi Civil Wars, Congo Wars, Syrian Civil War, and the Rwanda and Burundi genocides. However, the greatest amount of killing has been done by German masqueraders. They committed an average of 100,000 medical murders annually in the United States over a period of nearly 4 decades from about 1961 to 2001, or a total of between 3 to million people. They cremated between 5 to 6 million innocent white adults and children of non German ancestry alive in electric crematoriums in the United States alone. They would have committed similar murders in France, United Kingdom, Russia, Benelux, and Scandinavian countries, though I do not have enough information to make estimate of their numbers. But the greatest number of murders committed by German masqueraders have been in the form of abortions. The number of abortions in the United States since 1960 is estimated at 60 million. The numbers in the United Kingdom and France during the same period are roughly 9 million each. The number of abortions in Russia since 1960 is a staggering 120 million. Abortions in Scandinavian and Benelux countries for the same period are a total of about 7 million. That brings the total number of abortions roughly to 205 million. Till about 2001 AD, most of the abortions were orchestrated by German masqueraders. After that, their activities became fully known. However, they still used threats to force many women to get abortions even after 2001. If we take the number of dead in wars since World War II, in which the Germans had a hand at 25 million, the number of Americans dead in medical murders and in electric crematoriums and other ways at 9 to 10 million, and the number of abortions attributable to the Germans at half the number of the total 205 million, or about 102.5 million. We can attribute the number of dead to the Germans at roughly 137 million by adding up all these numbers. That is how great a killing machine the Germans and German masqueraders have been in their clandestine war since 1945. These estimates do not take into account the number of people murdered in various ways in British Commonwealth countries, France, Russia, and other countries of Europe. Germany has to pay for all these crimes against humanity. These people simply have an implacable mindset like Satan the devil. Feeling or expressing gratitude to the Allies after World War II for forgiveness of the horrible crimes they have committed is not part of their thinking. It stems from their satanic delusion that they only have the divine spark in them and that the rest of humanity is like cats and dogs to be merely used to serve them. About 5 years ago, I wrote an e-booklet titled God's Messages Delivered Through Angels, in which I made a judgment on how Germans should be dealt with by America and Britain for all the atrocities they have committed against us since World War II or over the past 100 years. This judgment was based on about 20 years of thinking on the subject. I have never wavered from that judgment and stand by it even today. I am quoting my judgment on the Germans from that booklet, which, by the way, is available free of charge from my religious website www.churchofgodmessage.com. So, this is the judgment I made. There is a standard of God's judgment given through Obadiah the prophet in Obadiah verse 15. For the day of the Lord upon all the nations is near. As you have done, it shall be done to you. Your reprisal shall return upon your own head. This is the standard we will use to deal with Germany. In keeping with this standard, we will not invent any new tortures or form of punishment, but will do to them exactly as they have done to us. We will not add anything to the evil they've done to us, but neither will we subtract anything from it. So in World War III, our goal will be to destroy a lot more than half of Germany's population, even up to 2/3 of its entire population. The number I have in mind of the Germans in Germany to be left alive is around 28 million total. That will be our goal. It will also be our goal to help all nations to identify and exterminate all German masqueraders living in their midst, man, woman, and child. Let me repeat that. We will leave only about 28 million Germans in Germany alive. The rest will be cremated alive, killed through medical murders in gas chambers, or shot dead. after being subjected to every torture, pain, and suffering that they subjected Americans, Britons, Jews, French, and Russians to in the past 100 years. And German masqueraders in every country will be exterminated, man, woman, and child. That was my judgment on them more than 5 years ago, and it still has not changed. Let me make it absolutely clear. No matter where the trigger for World War III comes, Germany will be our target number one. Even if Germany does not start the war, we know that behind the scenes they are the real instigators. It all started in the very late 1950s and early 1960s when Satan guided them to develop the technology to deliver threats to people electronically. That is when all the oppression in America, Britain, and around the world started. So Germany will be target number one. As soon as World War III starts, no matter where, how, and by whom, we will go after Germany first, even if they do not start the war. They have done evil directly against Israelite countries, meaning against America, British Commonwealth nations, Israel, France, Ireland, Scandinavian and Benelux countries. They have done evil directly against Israelite countries through tens of millions of German masqueraders in our midst and their allies around the world. They gave the order after World War II to activate these masqueraders around the world and have already murdered tens of millions of Americans and other Israelites around the world. They have to be brought to justice for these atrocities. So Germany will be our target number one, no matter who starts the war. Besides the people who are to be exterminated, that is the Banias in India, and German masqueraders in all countries, more Germans in Germany will die as a percent of the nation's population than any other nation, except the Palestinians, who will also lose two-thirds of their population. They will not be spared any horror the German masqueraders have inflicted on Israelite peoples. Their ruddiest children and adults, the fairest among them, will be cremated alive, buried alive, killed in gas chambers, and every other atrocity will be meted out to them that German masqueraders have committed in our countries. That is the only language the Germans understand. Their cities will be terrorized with gun violence as they have done in our countries. The elderly will be tortured by having their wrists tied to chairs all day long to restrain them as they tortured our elderly in nursing homes. They will be murdered by serial killers, and we will not forget that they counseled the Chinese to murder Sikh merchant Navy Captain Jagveer Singh Sidhu. In short, they will be spared no pain, suffering, or terror. That will be a lesson for them for the future that they can expect retribution in kind for any atrocity they ever commit on anyone. Abortion is the only atrocity they will escape because we will not interfere in any human process that God controls. Let me assure the Germans and masqueraders that they are wasting their time by sending preachers to preach forgiveness to me. The Germans will not escape justice this time. Till they are fully brought to justice, they will always be a target and enemy number one. Now, China has committed crimes against humanity in what it has done to the Uyghurs and Tibetans. It was responsible for the 1.5 to 2 million Cambodians murdered, nearly a quarter of Cambodia's population of 7.8 million at that time, by the Khmer Rouge regime of Pol Pot, by convincing him that the best way for the communist revolution to succeed was to eliminate the intellectuals and those who resisted. But the real goal of China was to have the Cambodians destroy their own nation so that they could walk in and take over the land and enslave the rest of the population, like they did to the Tibetans and Uyghurs. The Han Chinese must be brought to justice for these crimes against humanity. In an alliance with the Germans, Indians living in the states of Rajasthan, Gujarat, Bengal, Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, and Telangana have murdered people of British and American descent and Sikhs. They too will be brought to justice for their crimes. Obadiah's standard of punishment will be applied to them as well. Here is some food for thought for China and Germany. Germany's hatred of the Jews is driven by Satan the devil because of the blessings and promises of rulership by God to the Jews. These are stated in Genesis 49, verse 10. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh, meaning until Christ comes. This is a promise of a Jew always ruling over one tribe, at least one tribe of Israel. But Jews actually rule some of the most powerful nations on earth. That is how God keeps his promises. He promises little but delivers much. Now, Germany murdered 6 million Jews during World War II, but besides in the state of Israel and Jews in many other countries such as the United States and Europe, other countries that are Jewish are Japan, Korea, and Thailand. The Jats and Chinese of India and Pakistan are Jews as well and number approximately 5 to 60 million people. Then tens of millions of Jews live in Russia. In addition, hundreds of millions of people in Pakistan and the Indian states of Punjab, Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, and Uttarakhand are descendants of the other tribes of Israel. Thus, we have enough manpower and technical capabilities to take on China, India, and Germany if war is thrust upon us in all these three spheres. Here then is my message to the Germans. You have not learned the lesson from our forgiveness during World War II. When we forgave you, you should have taken advantage of it by changing your ways. You chose to ignore the lesson. Now it is time for judgment on you and not forgiveness. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please continue to watch my videos and read my articles on important world events, World War III watch, politics, international business, advice on health and medical problems, and much more for in-depth and insightful analysis. Please also subscribe to my YouTube channel, Unmasked Truth with Harmanjeet Saini, to view and get information on the latest videos. Thank you.